Okay guys, we're going to be reacting to this video, to Fnaf Horror. This is for you guys. I'm sorry I have to go for this, but okay, it's for y'all. Okay, let's start.
Welcome to Deer Hunter Productions. I'm DaneCat33, and I'll be attempting to put together a full timeline of the Five Nights at Freddy's series. That's right, mainline games, spin-off games, and books that are connected to the games. We're gonna be throwing all of those into one big, happy, messy timeline. I want to start this video by saying that there are a lot of theories and speculations surrounding the series as a whole. So if your timeline looks different from mine, that is perfectly fine. We all have our own interpretations of the story. This is just the conclusion I reach based on the evidence provided. Five Nights at Freddy's follows the crooked Fazbear Entertainment, a company founded by inventors and business partners Henry Emily and Willie Mafton, who was one of the main villains throughout the series. Not much is known about Afton's early life, but from the Silver Eyes, we can gather that he felt powerless and unappreciated by the world. But then there was the other kind of petty tyrant, those who grew spiteful with their small scraps of power. Feeling more and more abused by the year, by family who did not appreciate them, by neighbors who slighted them in imperceptible ways, by a world that left them, somehow, lacking something essential. Before him stood someone who had spent so much of his life fighting like a cornered rat, that he had taken on the mantle of bitter sadism as an integral part of himself. He would strike out against others and revel in their pain, feeling righteously that the world owed him his cruel pleasures. One of Henry and Afton's first locations is Fredbear's Family Diner, a small restaurant likely established sometime in the 70s, featuring two animatronic performers, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, early versions of Freddy and Bonnie. Speaking of early, it's also worth mentioning that it's implied there was a predecessor to Fredbear's Family Diner, namely Fredbear's Singing Show, which was some sort of attraction. But we don't know much about that, so let's just focus on the diner. Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are spring-lock suits, meaning that they double as both fully functioning animatronics and costumes that a person could climb into. The spring locks compress the animatronic parts inside the suit, which allows for a person to fit inside and perform while wearing the costume. However, the spring locks are very dangerous. Even slight moisture can cause the locks to break loose and impale the wearer with all the animatronic parts in the suit. Henry and Afton are also friends with another inventor named Edwin Murray. His father owns Murray Co. and their factory, Murray's Costume Manor, aka MCM. This location produces costumes and carnival games for their clients. Edwin works here and meets a puppeteer named Fiona. Together, they voice Edwin's creations, Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, robotic puppets designed to guide MCM employees and visitors. Much like Edwin's creations, he and Fiona eventually get married and have a son named David Murray. For his first birthday, he's gifted a white tiger doll with blue and green eyes, likely because of David's own heterochromia. Around this time, Edwin's father unfortunately passes, putting Edwin in charge of Murray's Costume Manor. He uses the company to produce some of his own inventions, most notably the Cleanovac. Unfortunately, he's a workaholic, even skipping out on David's second birthday party to make a new invention. He eventually partners with Henry and Afton to create new things for Fazbear Entertainment, notably at Fredbear's Singing Show and Family Diner, as there are posters for those alongside other companies and establishments that they've partnered with. We can see in the loading docks that MCM made floats for Fazbear Entertainment, and we learn from the Secret of the Mimic launch trailer that MCM created several mascots and costumes for Fazbear. Later in the game, we discover that they produce Springlock costumes for them too. However, these spring locks are much safer than Henry's, being able to endure water damage and even falls without injuring the wearer. Their biggest collaboration is working together on a new restaurant project, the infamous chain of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza establishments. However, tragedy strikes Edwin. A fire starts at one of the Fall Fest events that MCM had been contracted to help with, and Fiona perishes in the fire. On David's third birthday, it seems like Edwin breaks the news to him that his mother is gone. To take care of David while he works, Edwin creates an animatronic endoskeleton known as M1. This animatronic is the culmination of Edwin's previous inventions. It learns like the Stay Up Latte, copies voices like the Mycelium Men, and shapeshifts like Murray's Magic Coat Rack and the Cleanovac, which allows it to wear any of MCM's costumes. One day, Edwin discovers something on the frequency 4625, copying some of Fiona's dialogue from David's second birthday tape.
much
That's where I heard
Okay, great.
it. It's her or someone that sounds like her.
Guys, I'm gonna do this for 2 hours, so if you don't, so guys, if
You're missing the party.
so I'm probably
It seems
gonna
like
stop for a
M1
little
watched
while,
this
'cause
tape
2
and either began
hours
to
I'm
mimic
gonna be
Fiona
doing
or
stuff.
gave Edwin the idea to use
So I'm gonna
M1 to
pause
bring
and
her
do this,
back.
and this actually might take
Regardless, by
2
David's
hours
4th
possibly,
birthday,
or I can
M1
get
is
started.
fully adapted to
I'm
its
definitely
role
gonna have
as
to
a
take a food
replacement
break and
Fiona,
stuff.
and we'll start referring to her as F10 and 4. On the same birthday, Edwin gives David a playground outside of MCM, although his lawyer is concerned by how close it is to the factory's loading docks. On David's 5th birthday, Edwin leaves him at the playground, while he and F10 and 4 prepare his party in MCM's conference room. After complimenting F10 and 4's cake baking skills, Edwin sends her to fetch David from the playground. However, it's revealed that David has died, likely
it
because, as Edwin's lawyer said, the playground was too close to MCM's loading docks, and because of that fatal oversight, David was hit and killed by a car. This is similar to how in the books, David chases Ball out onto the road and was hit by a van. It's somewhat implied in the Moon.exe minigame that F10 and 4 might have been responsible for
465.
David's death. As in that minigame, she kills the baby owl, who represents David. Regardless, she urges Edwin to make another mimic program to recreate David, and initially, he resists.
Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
All this time wasted? I should have been having fun with him, playing games and teaching him how to make things. But I didn't. I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
You do not mean that. It is me. I'm Fiona.
Stop talking like her. You're not her.
Despite Edwin's reluctance, he eventually complies and attempts to make a copy of F10 and 4's M1 program,
Just say, huh?
named M2. And this program inhabits the M1 endoskeleton. It seems like F10 and 4 was ejected from the endoskeleton body and stored somewhere else as M2 developed. As if Edwin's clearly unwell mental state wasn't bad enough, MCM begins to collapse around him. See, while Henry and Afton are seemingly friends with him, in reality, they're trying to tear apart his company, poaching all of his employees to build up Fazbear Entertainment. Afton had messaged an MCM admin to get the staff contacts in exchange for a manager's position at a Freddy's location. Fazbear also offered MCM employees much higher pay and encouraged them to convince their fellow employees to jump ship. A trio of employees, led by a man named Stan, stole some of Fiona's character patterns before leaving, and they formed their own company, Stan's Budget Tech. And using MCM's stolen work, they create the mediocre melodies and Candy Cadet animatronics seen in the later games. Sometime during the collapse of MCM, Fazbear Entertainment gains ownership of their land and entire catalog, as evidenced by a message from Afton to Edwin, and Fazbear Entertainment's later use of characters such as Foxy, Monty, and Roxy, which MCM originally owned. One of the more notable things that came from this was Fazbear Entertainment learning about M2. Along with this, Afton and Henry kept changing what they wanted for Freddy's. It seems that the pizzeria originally intended to use Springlock suits of Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, Bub, and Monty. These characters were designed by Fiona and were almost done, but Henry and Afton made Edwin change them into an animatronic crew, replacing Fredbear and Spring Bonnie with slightly different variants, those being Freddy Fazbear and Bonnie. New additions to the band include Chica and Foxy. Chica's restaurants originally owned Chica, who was the mascot of Chica's Party World. MCM was hired to make a Chica costume, which Fiona designed, although the suits produced are much more creepy than the initial artwork. It seems that Fazbear Entertainment eventually acquired the company and made Edwin add Chica to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Foxy, on the other hand, was part of an MCM show before being added to Freddy's band, likely after Fazbear Entertainment gained ownership of MCM's characters. All of this pressure builds until it seems like Edwin snaps out of his delusions with his robot family. When he encounters M2 copying David, he loses his temper.
Stop. You're not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
Edwin beats M2, causing it to mimic his rage and become violent. Sometime after this, Edwin closes the MCM facility and locks himself in his house. He becomes so focused on his work that he neglects repairing M2. F10 and 4 discovers that M2 has developed violent tendencies, although she never learns that Edwin attacked it. She begs him to help her stop the animatronic's violent behavior. but it seems like he didn't want to finish the M2 program or repair the animatronic. So she instead sends him blueprints for a cradle. This giant computer is designed to keep M2 safe, since F10 and 4 still views him as their son, but it also adds boundaries so M2 won't hurt anyone. Edwin complies and builds the cradle, also known as Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage. He puts F10 and 4's program inside the machine, and stores it in MCM's mock-up of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. However, it doesn't seem like he activates the cradle program. Eventually, the damaged M2 goes to Edwin's office and begins copying Edwin to repair itself. After being damaged, M2 stopped mimicking David, likely because the attack gave him an identity crisis. After all, Edwin beat him simply for assuming the identity he was programmed to. M2 now copies its surroundings, and instead of just mimicking David, it can adapt to and mimic a variety of characters. While repairing himself, a failed power test results in an explosion that destroys a large chunk of Edwin's office and causes a small fire. The incident also injures Edwin, who desperately begs for M2's help.
I can't move. I can't feel my legs. You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out. I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy.
Edwin likely died
So
after this,
Edwin died,
since as far as we
and,
know,
M2
M2 never
basically
gets some
became
help.
all-
However,
basically
we
became
don't
a
see his
fighter.
body, so who knows for sure. Regardless, M2 finishes repairing itself, and he returns to Murray's Costume Manor. Since Fazbear Entertainment had learned about the animatronic from the MCM admins, they decide that they just have to have this murder robot.
We think that endoskeleton has a lot of potential, and that's why we want you to retrieve Murray's original schematic for it.
Fazbear sends its employees to MCM to retrieve the animatronic schematics, and F10 and 4 uses this situation to her advantage. She copies the voice of Fazbear Entertainment's dispatch in an attempt to get the workers to deliver her the M2 schematics, so she can send them to Edwin and have him repair and complete the M2 program. If it wasn't clear enough yet, M2 is now a sadistic monster. He mocked Edwin with his own voice and child neglect when he begged him for help, and now he slaughters anyone that he comes across. Despite being a violent murder robot, he's one with personality. It's shown throughout the games that he likes to toy with his prey, sometimes slowing down his speed if he believes they're cornered. It's also implied that instead of simply killing his victims, he'll fatally injure them and leave them to die. He is also very destructive, explicitly showcasing his boiling rage through his violent actions. He's no longer just a copy of David or the M1 program. He's formed his own identity, and is known simply as the Mimic. This is bad news for the Fazbear workers who enter MCM, where the Mimic resides. None of them listen to F10 and 4 and are all caught by the endoskeleton, who stuffs them in costumes around MCM, even matching the personality of his victims with the mascot costumes. Now, if you've read the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, you know those have a different origin story for the Mimic. But what you might not have known is that story is actually referenced in Secret of the Mimic. In MCM's basement, you can find a note that reads, "Memory error, detail report. We were expecting. There were complications. Consciousness was lost for an undetermined time. Once I woke, we were all together and happy. A family. But something was different. I felt wrong somehow. Was I me? I would never sleep again. Corrupted file suspected. Please advise." The complications while the Murrays were expecting seems to be a clear reference to the Mimic story in Tales, where Fiona died during childbirth. So it seems like that book origin story is actually just a memory error in one of the Mimics. Does that mean the rest of the books are still canon? I'm not quite sure. And since their canonicity is very questionable, I won't treat them as part of the timeline. But I will still discuss them
There's
since they
an ad
include a lot of
happening,
lore
so-
implications. Back to the games, the Mimic's mayhem continues in Secret of the Mimic, where on September 7th, 1979, Fazbear Entertainment sends its overworked employee, Arnold, to retrieve the Mimic schematics. He travels to Murray's Costume Manor, and here, Arnold has to evade the Mimic as he upgrades his data diver to access new areas of the building. It is worth noting that after a recent update, you can see a shadowy figure moving around in the warehouse manager's office. While this might just be the Digityper bot that resides there, its humanoid shape and movement around the room has led some people to suspect it's Edwin, who survived the Mimic's explosion and returned to MCM. Or maybe it's his ghost, who's to say for sure. Early in the game, Phasma Entertainment's Dispatch is secretly replaced by F10N4, who mimics Dispatch's voice and guides Arnold through MCM. Throughout his journey, the Mimic wears a variety of costumes and adapts to some of Murray's animatronics, including Jackie, Big Top, and Nurse Dolly. Arnold manages to defeat these forms one by one. Toward the end of the game, he enters the admin wing, where the Mimic now wears a Chica's Party World costume. Luckily, he manages to evade her, and obtains the executive permission, allowing him to enter Edwin's office and download the Mimic schematics. But the animatronic appears before he can leave, and forces him to take a detour into the tunnels, where he encounters David's ghost, which appears as a giant version of his tiger plush. His spirit teleports around and giggles as it tries to catch him, but Arnold prevails and makes it back to the security office, where F10N4 asks him to hand over the schematics. Instead, he runs the parachute program and escapes through some vents, making F10N4 very upset.
You have made your choice. You are not going to make it out of here alive. You could have helped. If you had just given me the schematics, we could have fixed things.
But you're just like the others. The other technicians, the workers. They didn't work, and it caught them all. Now it's your turn to play dress up.
Arnold continues further and discovers MCM's research and development, where they'd been working on a mock-up of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, featuring the original Springlock gang of Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, Monty, and Bub. The Mimic follows him down there and wears an amalgamation of prototype characters. Arnold moves the Springlock suits in front of the pizzeria's cameras to trick F10N4 into closing the security doors and draining the building's power. With no power remaining, he enters the office and meets face-to-face with F10N4. She tells Arnold to travel to Edwin's house so he can activate the communication subterminal.
I have a message for him. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want. If you do not, M2 will never stop pursuing you. Tell Edwin, I still love him. Entering standby mode.
Afterwards, Arnold takes a ride through some tunnels, traveling from MCM to Edwin's house, where the Mimic has once again followed him. He makes his way to Edwin's office, only to find the room destroyed, and the tape implying he's deceased. In Murray's surveillance room, Arnold activates F10N4's Cradle program, but before he can leave, the Mimic corners him. He's chased further into the house, and when powering up a generator, he accidentally starts a fire. He takes the elevator back down to the tunnels between the house and MCM, and as he descends, F10N4's message plays.
I hope you're taking care of yourself. Knowing you are still trying to hold it all together. But the company doesn't matter anymore. It's over. You need to let it go. I beg you, put it all aside and fix M2. It is not too late. I miss you. But I miss my child more. I watched him grow up through this machine. I want him back. It's not too late to fix our family.
As Arnold tries to escape, he's chased by the Mimic and Proto-Mimics, cobbled together abominations who seem to have been built by the Mimic while copying Edwin. Arnold makes his way back to the burning MCM building and escapes to his van. However, the Mimic has hitched a ride. Arnold wakes up to find his van on fire, and the Mimic lurching toward him. The Endoskeleton rips off his data diver, retrieving its schematics. After doing so, it simply leaves Arnold to burn in his van. Alicia activated the Cradle program, which will come back in ruin. 4 years later, in 1983, the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 minigames occur. These follow the week of Afton's youngest son's birthday, where he's tormented by his older brother, Michael Afton. Throughout this week, Afton communicates with his son through Fredbear plushies scattered around their house and the diner, keeping him afraid of his brother and the animatronics. At the end of the week, it's finally time for the crying child's birthday. But unfortunately, Michael and his friends shove him into Fredbear's mouth as a prank. The animatronic's powerful jaw then crushes the child's head. The year of this incident is confirmed to be 1983, thanks to the Fredbear and Friends TV show having a copyright date of 1983, and in the week before interactive novel, if you type 1983 into the phone, you hear a recording of Fredbear's bite, and it's mentioned that this happened again 4 years later, which matches up with the bite of 87 that we'll discuss later. In Night 6's ending, we see a cutscene that appears to be some sort of coma dream. Michael apologizes to his brother, and eventually, the Fredbear plushie, aka Afton, begins speaking. He says he will put his son back together before we hear a flatline, signifying that Afton's son has died. During the same year, the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza diners finally open. This is confirmed by the Faz tokens seen throughout the later games, which indicate that Freddy's opened in 1983. According to the audio training cassettes heard in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, when Freddy's first opens, it uses spring-lock suits.
Welcome to your new career as a performer/entertainer for Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Right now we have 2 specially designed suits that double as both animatronic and suit. Please make sure the spring locks are fastened tight to ensure the animatronic devices remain fixed.
In Pizzeria Simulator's security puppet minigame, we see that one of the new Freddy's locations, Henry built an animatronic known as the marionette or puppet to keep an eye on his daughter, Charlie. She wears a green bracelet that helps the puppet identify her and keep her from leaving the building. However, some bullies trap the puppet inside the box and lock Charlie outside. We see the result of this in the Take Cake to the Children minigame, which, let me point out, features Freddy, confirming that this happened at a Freddy's location, not Fredbear's. The new book, Ticket to Fun, also reveals that children attending birthday parties at Freddy's are provided with wristbands, which serve as both a souvenir and a way to track the kids. It's likely that these party wristbands are the same ones we see Charlie and the other kids wearing. Furthermore, when using a blacklight on this page, it reveals Charlie, solidifying that she was wearing a party band and that this event takes place at Freddy's. The puppet eventually breaks out of the box, but before it can save Charlie, she's discovered by Afton, who drives up to the location and promptly murders the girl, likely because of how jealous he is of Henry. The puppet then exits the building to find Charlie. It begins to malfunction in the rain, and discovers her body next to Afton's tire tracks. The animatronic crawls up to her and shuts down. Charlie's spirit then possesses the puppet. We know her death happens in 1983, since that's when she dies in the novel trilogy, and in Help Wanted 2, when typing 1983 into the private room, you're rewarded with the puppet memory doll, indicating that that's the year when she was killed. Henry also says that Afton's violence was first inflicted on him.
Not until I undo what he has done and heal this wound. A wound first inflicted on me, but then one that I let bleed out to cause all of this.
So it seems pretty clear that Charlie was his first victim. It seems like Afton noticed Charlie's spirit haunting the puppet, and wanted to recreate that. This also matches up with how in the novel trilogy, Afton was fascinated by Henry's robot Charlie and wanted to recreate her. Anyways, Afton makes his own location, known as Circus Baby's Pizza World. Like most things in the early timeline, when this location opened is a bit vague. But considering it has variants of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, I think it's safe to say it opened after Freddy's. We also learn in Sister Location that this pizzeria has at least one spring-lock suit.
You're inside something that came from my old pizzeria. I don't think it was ever used. At least not the way it was meant to be used. I'd recommend that you keep the spring locks wound up.
This is important since later we learn that the spring locks are decommissioned. So this means that this location was opened before that happened. The other performers at this location are the Fun Times, an animatronic crew consisting of small characters like the Biddy Babs, Mini Renas, Bon Bon, and bigger animatronics such as Circus Baby, Ballora, and Funtime variants of Freddy, Foxy, and Chica. Although she isn't very important. These animatronics are secretly designed to murder children, likely as an attempt to recreate the same haunting that happened when William Afton killed Charlie. However, he didn't get very far with this, as unfortunately, the first victim is his daughter, Elizabeth. Despite his repeated warnings to stay away from Circus Baby, she wants to see the animatronic, and when the two of them are the only ones in the room, Baby's stomach opens, and presents Elizabeth with ice cream. When she steps closer to collect it, a claw emerges from Baby and drags Elizabeth into her stomach, where she eventually dies. After this, Circus Baby's Pizza World closes, under the guise that they were gas leaks. However, Afton's plan wasn't all in vain, as Elizabeth went on to possess Circus Baby. However, unlike with the puppet, it seems like Elizabeth fused with Circus Baby's AI. As in the games and books, she remembers killing Elizabeth as Baby, but at the same time also is Elizabeth. Sometime after this, the Springlock suits are decommissioned at Freddy's.
After learning of an unfortunate incident at the sister location involving multiple and simultaneous Springlock failures, the company has deemed the suits temporarily unfit for employees.
And we know this is after Circus Baby's Pizza World closes, since again, that location had a Springlock suit, meaning they weren't decommissioned yet, so that must have happened sometime after Pizza World closed. It's also possible that Circus Baby's Pizza World is where the Springlock failure occurred, since Baby said that the Springlock suit at her restaurant wasn't used the way it was meant to be. We also know that this Springlock failure occurred at a sister location, and Five Nights at Freddy's sister location's title might be a subtle nod to that. Since Afton had managed to recreate animatronic possession with Circus Baby, he decided to conduct further experiments. In 1985, at one of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza locations, likely the same one where Charlie was killed, William Afton dresses up in the old Spring Bonnie costume and lures kids to the safe room.
Every location is built with one extra room that is not included in the digital map layouts programmed into the animatronics or security system. This room is hidden to customers, invisible to animatronics, and is always off camera. The safe room is reserved for equipment and or other property not being currently used and as a backup safety location for employees only.
An off-camera room is the perfect spot for Afton to lure his victims to so he could kill them discreetly. He used various methods to lure his victims. In Ticket of Fun, we learned that he helped an 8-year-old boy named Timmy Douglas win the Midnight Motors arcade. And while that did help him gain the boy's trust, he was ultimately thwarted by Timmy wanting to get back to his party and open presents. In Pizzeria Simulator's Fruity Maze minigame, and the Fourth Closet novel, we learned that he told one girl named Susie that her dead dog was still alive, and promised to take her to him. Of course, he instead killed her in the safe room. In total, he murders 5 or maybe 6 kids. For years, it's been believed that Afton only killed 5 kids. But in Ultimate Custom Night and Into the Pit, it's strongly implied that there were 6 victims. In Ultimate Custom Night series, Toy Chica, the high school years, we follow Toy Chica killing her love interests, paralleling how Afton murders his victims.
I told him that someone ran over his dog in front of my house, but once he's there, I'll entice him with warm cookies, lure him inside, invite him inside, and then I'll have him.
What's interesting though, is that we see Toy Chica has 7 victims, representing Charlie, the 5 missing children, and another unknown victim. Then later, in the Into the Pit short story, there are 6 victims in a recreation of Afton's 1985 murders. In the video game adaptation, we see the same number of dead kids. And in the Balloon Boy minigame, we collect 6 party hats, representing Afton's 6 victims in 1985. The Fetch minigame also has us collecting 6 balloons and placing them where Afton murdered the kids at Freddy's. So it seems like Ultimate Custom Night and Into the Pit are hinting that Afton killed 6 kids at Freddy's in the 1985 murders. Afton's known victims here are Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy. But who is the identity of this 6th mystery child? We'll focus on that later. Afton stuffs the kids in the animatronic costumes, and as shown in the Give Gifts, Give Life minigame, the puppet gives them life, allowing them to haunt the animatronics. Gabriel possesses Freddy, Jeremy becomes Bonnie, Susie haunts Chica, Fritz possesses Foxy, and Cassidy becomes the ghostly Golden Freddy.
It's one of the
The reason this yellow bear isn't an actual animatronic like the other victims is because as seen in Give Gifts, Give Life, the puppet never gave Cassidy life. So similar to David Murray, he exists as a ghost. It doesn't seem like the puppet gave that 6th kid life either. Also, it's worth noting that Ticket to Fun implies these disturbing minigames are created as a result of the Freddy's arcade machines being haunted. According to the puppet, Afton's victims became animals.
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
Scott Cawthon elaborated upon this while discussing the movie during Daco's interview.
These animatronics are possessed by the spirits of kids, and these are innocent kids. These are victims themselves. So it's very, very difficult to still have a horror movie, still have those kills that you need, but still preserve the innocence of those kids. That these animatronics are, the spirits in them are these kids that are basically very confused and lost, animals backed into a corner, and kind of left with this impression that adults are out to get them.
It seems like Afton notices that the children's spirits are haunting the animatronics. In both the books and movie, he's depicted as seeing the animatronics as his family. To quote the Silver Eyes, "They're home with me. Their happiest day. There isn't a way out anymore. All that's left is family." In the film, he refers to the animatronics as little ones and children, again painting the picture of Afton viewing them as his family. I didn't know where to mention this, but it's also mentioned that Fazbear Entertainment's management noticed Spring Bonnie being moved, likely during Afton's murder spree, and they mentioned that the suit is unsafe.
Management has also been made aware that the Spring Bonnie animatronic has been noticeably moved and would like to remind employees that this costume is not safe to wear under any circumstances.
So this confirms that Afton killed these kids after the Springlocks were decommissioned, meaning that this is after Circus Baby's Pizza World was opened and quickly closed, since that location still used Springlock suits. Speaking of which, sometime afterwards, Freddy's closes due to Afton's murders, and he opens Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals.
Due to the massive success, and even more so the unfortunate closing of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, it was clear that the stage was set, no pun intended, for another contender in children's entertainment. Unlike most entertainment venues, our robotic entertainers are rented out for private parties during the day.
And on their off time, they're stored in an underground facility, connected to which is a testing facility, an area designed to look like a house with test subjects living in a child's bedroom. This is where the main gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 4 occurs, and the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, Dittophobia, shed some light on the facility. In the story, the main character, Rory, is trapped in the house testing facility. He believes that his life is normal. Every day he eats breakfast and gets ready for school, but he struggles to find the front door. He eventually gets drowsy and goes to bed, where nightmarish versions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy attack him. It's revealed later that the house in the facility is actually decrepit, and the nightmare animatronics are simply costumes on metal skeletons. The reason Rory had believed everything was clean and normal was because of the gas Afton had been pumping into the house. The gas in the gas tanks were hallucinogens. These were drugs that made him think he was seeing and doing things he wasn't seeing and doing. The gas was what made him think he was living in the house with his parents. The gas was also the source of his night terrors. Apparently the whole thing was a nasty experiment designed to study the effects of ongoing fear in children. Whoever was behind the experiment wanted to see what happened if a child faced the same horrors night after night after night, with no real life during the day to balance out the awfulness of the nightmares. This poses the question, why would Afton do this? Maybe he's trying to replicate his deceased son's constantly terrified behavior in other test subjects. Possibly as part of his promise to put him back together? I'm not quite sure. What we do know for sure is that he abandoned the experiment. Rory discovers that Afton had stopped taking notes 10 years ago, and everything in the house, such as the food, gas, and nightmare animatronics, were automated. Another automated feature is a recording Afton left behind, which gaslights Rory into staying in the facility. He tells Rory how out of place he was in the real world, but here he's been watched over and taken care of, revealing that Afton targets misfit kids for these experiments. The story ends with Afton's recording convincing him to stay in the testing facility, and dooming him to eternal night terrors. In the games, the facility serves as the main location in Five Nights at Freddy's 4's gameplay, where we seem to play as one of the test subjects fending off the nightmare animatronics as part of the experiment. In sister location, you can see the testing facility on the break room map of Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals. Later in Help Wanted, we play through a digital recreation of the facility, which has the fun times appear in the house. Both of these details, along with the books, pretty much confirm that the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 house is connected to Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rentals. A map of the location reveals that the plush trap hallway from Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is also connected to the underground facility, but it's not a part of the house area. While that zone is connected through Afton's private room where he observes these experiments, the plush trap hallway is accessed through the Blora Gallery. In Five Nights at Freddy's 4, after you complete each of the first 4 nights, you're transported to the hallway to play fun with Plush Trap, who is a small, plush-like version of Spring Bonnie. If you manage to stop Plush Trap on the room's X, then you can skip the first 2 hours during the next night. As for what this means story-wise, I think it's possible that after surviving each night in the main testing facility, Afton transports his subjects to the hallway to test them further, and if they win, he gives them 2 hours off the following night as a reward. Or this might be an entirely different child being experimented on, as there's a white dot in each testing facility, and those seem to represent children, as we can see a white dot in the crying child's bedroom, which presumably represents him. The map also shows 4 other dots in the hallway, not including the player or Plush Trap, who is represented by a gray dot. Unlike the white dots, these gray ones connect to most of the animatronics at Circus Babies, the Nightmare animatronics, and you can even see Fredbear and Spring Bonnie at the diner. What's interesting though is that there are 5 animatronics in the hallway, possibly implying that there are multiple Plush Traps. However, in a digital recreation of the hallway in Help Wanted, you can sometimes see mini arenas standing by these spots, implying that these dots actually represent some mini arenas hiding in the room. Also, considering the underground facility is connected to Fredbear's, and even as indicators for where Fredbear, Spring Bonnie, and the Crying Child should be, I assume that means the facility was constructed before the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 minigames. Although we know Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals was only opened after Freddy's closed, which begs the question of what this facility was originally used for. Maybe it was only for the testing facility before being repurposed for Circus Babies. I'm not sure what to make of it, but regardless, we can reasonably assume that Afton spied on his son from the facility's private room. As you can see one of the Fredbear Nanny Cam plushies in there, with what appears to be a remote to select which Fredbear plushie Afton wants to watch his son from. We'll circle back to Circus Babies Entertainment and Rentals later. But for now, let's focus on Five Nights at Freddy's 2. This entry takes place in 1987, at the new and improved Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. After the missing children's incident, apparently the old Freddy's location was left to rot before Fazbear reopened with the new toy animatronics.
They've spent a small fortune on these new animatronics. Facial recognition, advanced mobility, but most importantly, they're all tied into some kind of criminal database so they can detect a predator a mile away.
In the main gameplay, we're put in the shoes of Jeremy Fitzgerald, the second guard to work at the improved pizzeria, and we have to face off against the new toy animatronics. In calls from the phone guy, named Ralph, we learn that something has recently happened at the establishment.
Okay, so just to update you, there's been somewhat of an investigation going on. We may end up having to close for a few days, I don't know. From what I understand, the building is on lockdown. No one is allowed in or out, you know, especially concerning any previous employees. The place is closed down, at least for a while. Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one.
Yeah.
Someone used it.
I'm sorry.
Now none of them are acting right.
It sounds like William Afton once again used the Spring Bonnie suit to kill more kids, which is further implied in the Save Them minigame, where we play as Withered Freddy, following the puppet throughout the building and discovering 5 bodies. It seems like these victims went on to possess the 5 new toy animatronics. Those being Toy Freddy, Toy Bonnie, Toy Chica, the Mangle, and Balloon Boy. This is further implied by them exhibiting supernatural behavior, such as glowing eyes. Along with the new possessed animatronics, the original gang returns, albeit now withered.
Those are from the previous location, and we just use them for parts now. The idea at first was to repair them. They even started retrofitting them with some of the newer technology, but they were just so ugly, you know? And the smell.
Jeremy has to survive Freddy and all of his friends for 6 nights.
Cringy.
And after that, there's one last event.
We have one more event scheduled for tomorrow, a birthday. You'll be on day shift. Wear your uniform. Stay close to the animatronics and make sure they don't hurt anyone, okay?
It seems like this birthday party is where the infamous Bite of 87 occurred. This incident involved an unknown animatronic attacking someone and biting their frontal lobe off. Considering Jeremy was taking the day shift for that party, and was told to stay close to the animatronics, many fans think that he was the bite victim. This game also takes place in 1987, the same year as the bite, and the event is never mentioned by Ralph, likely meaning it didn't happen until after the 6th night. Following this is the custom night, where we play as someone named Fritz Smith. However, he gets fired immediately for tampering with the animatronics for the custom night AI. After that final night and the bite of 87, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was closed, and the new toy animatronics were scrapped, implying that one of them was behind the bite. A popular fan theory is that Mangle was the culprit, although Toy Chica's dialogue from Ultimate Custom Night implies she might have been behind the bite.
Where's my beak? Lodged in your forehead, of course.
But ultimately, it doesn't matter. Say Balloon Boy did the bite for all I care, the end result is still the same. It's also worth noting that the toys never appear again, outside of various recreations of them. So it's likely that after they were dismantled, their souls were set free. With the toy animatronics decommissioned, Fazbear Entertainment fixed up the withered animatronics and reopened Freddy Fazbear's Pizza with them. However, after the bite of 87, the animatronics are restrained to the stage.
They used to be allowed to walk around during the day, too. But then there was the bite of 87.
Oh yeah, speaking of our friend Ralph, he takes over the night shift when Freddy's reopens. But eventually, he decides to quit. During his last week of the job, he records messages for his future replacement, and the events of his final week are detailed in the Week Before interactive novel. Unfortunately, Ralph quitting has unintended consequences. The animatronics have been getting bored of the same old routine. And since Ralph decided to leave Freddy's, they figure, why can't they? The animatronics begin messing with the power and rerouting it to their charging platforms on the stage, which would allow them to travel further from Freddy's and terrorize locals, including Ralph's daughter, Coppelia. However, a junior reporter named Bronwyn Light caught wind of these plans thanks to her sources. And on the third night of Ralph's final week, she breaks into Freddy's through Party Room 2's window. She's caught by Bonnie before she can do anything to stop the animatronics, and she's stuffed in a Freddy costume. She holds out as long as she can, but when she realizes that it's too late for her, she records a message to warn Ralph. However, in the book's canon route, he never hears this, and on night 5, the animatronics get the best of him. So he records a final message for his replacement. And I know in the original Five Nights at Freddy's, you get his final message on night 4. But the novel reveals that's only because he forgot to record a message for night 4. So his final message plays on night 4 instead of 5.
Oh, hey, wow, day 4. I knew you could do it. Hey, listen, I may not be around to send you a message tomorrow. It's been a bad night here for me. I'm kind of glad that I recorded my messages for you when I did. Hey, do me a favor. Maybe sometime you could check inside those suits in the back room. I'm going to try to hold out until someone checks. Maybe it won't be so bad. I always wondered what was in all those empty heads back there. You know. Oh no.
After being attacked, Ralph wakes up inside a costume in the repair shop behind the stage, unable to move his body. The interactive novel ends on a very ominous note. All of your choices have led you here, and now you're out of options. The only thing you can do is wait. It's very likely that much like Bronwyn, Ralph couldn't hold out, and eventually died in the suit. Since neither of them were able to stop the animatronics' plans, it can be assumed that they left Freddy's to attack locals and maybe even kill Ralph's daughter. They eventually returned back to the pizzeria before the next week, where the main gameplay of the original Five Nights at Freddy's occurs. In the game that started it all, we play as Mike Schmidt, the new security guard at Freddy's. Mike is probably an alias for Michael Afton, William Afton's son, who put his brother in Fredbear's mouth and inadvertently killed him. In Sister Location, which we'll get to later, Michael has a name tag on the hand unit assistant that simply says Mike. And the survival logbook draws a lot of connections between Mike and Michael. Anyways, Mike or Michael or whatever fends off against the animatronics for not just 5, but 7 nights. However, he's fired for tampering with animatronics during the custom night. It's also worth mentioning that in the survival logbook, Mike draws Nightmare Fredbear, who is a monstrous version of Fredbear that appears during Five Nights at Freddy's 4's main gameplay. This might imply that Michael was the test subject being experimented on during that game. It would be pretty messed up for William Afton to test on his own son, but throughout the series, he's repeatedly shown to manipulate and even harm his children, so it's not too far-fetched to suggest that he experimented on them. Sometime after Five Nights at Freddy's, William Afton goes back to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to disassemble the animatronics and use their endoskeletons for more experiments. In order to destroy the Freddy's gang, he returns to the safe room, which is implied by Henry to be the same one where he murdered the kids in the first place.
He lured them all back to a familiar place, back with familiar tricks.
So that would mean that the Five Nights at Freddy's 1 location is the original Freddy's, which matches up with Ralph saying that they left the location to rot, and with it being the design of the mock Freddy's that MCM made. Anyways, another thing to note is that sometime after William Afton killed the original set of kids, the safe rooms were sealed. However, he's now opened the room and hides in there, since if you remember, the safe rooms are invisible to animatronics. As seen in the Five Nights at Freddy's 3 End of Night minigames, Shadow Freddy appears in the pizzeria. This ghostly character briefly appeared as an Easter egg in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, but we never really learn who or what he is. There's also Shadow Bonnie, who appears frequently throughout the series. Special Delivery implies that these characters are formed from Dark Remnant, or the human emotion of agony. Henry's insanity ending speech in Pizzeria Simulator strongly implies that Shadow Freddy is somehow conjured by Afton. He says that to lure the animatronics back to the safe room, Afton used familiar tricks, and both Shadow Freddy and Afton tell the kids, "Follow me." So it seems like Afton is behind Shadow Freddy's behavior. It's not clear how he influences Shadow Freddy or how he came to be. Maybe he was formed from the agony of Afton's crimes, who knows. What we do know is that Shadow Freddy lures the animatronics to the safe room. But since that area isn't programmed into their systems, they can't enter the room. As the bots leave, Afton ambushes them, and he manages to destroy all the original animatronics. He then takes their endoskeletons and melts them down into Remnant. This supernatural substance is a major focus in the later games and books. In Fazbear Frights, a character named Dr. Talbert explains Remnant. In non-scientific terms, it's like the metal's haunted. It's more complicated than that, of course, but it's similar to the way that water conducts electricity. Remnant is the mixing of the tangible with the intangible, of memory with the present. The people and things that are lost, it makes them almost real again. And just to be clear, Remnant isn't the same thing as Agony. Remnant is metal haunted by spirits and their memories, while Agony is extreme human emotion that impacts objects. To quote Dr. Phineas from Fazbear Frights, human emotion is slower to impact, more insidious. It emanates from us, or is excreted from us, if you will, like sweat or tears, and it wafts outward like a noxious cloud, soaking into the surroundings. Extreme human emotion appears to impact its surroundings far more powerfully the more negative it is. Agony, I'm convinced, radiates farther from people than any other emotion. My work is focused on my hypothesis that you can take a saturation of agony, add any kind of intelligence, even an artificial one, and they will combine together to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action. This, I believe, is what explains what people call haunted objects. To give an example, in the original Five Nights at Freddy's, the animatronics are haunted by spirits. However, all of the supernatural events that happen seem to be a result of the building itself being haunted by agony. It's also likely that the Mimic was infected with Edwin's agony when he was attacked, which is what drives his murderous behavior. Anyways, we'll focus on agony more later. Remnant is more of a now problem. As previously discussed, William Afton melts down the haunted endoskeletons into Remnant. He then develops a device known as the Scooper, which is designed to inject Remnant. Afton keeps the melted endoskeleton Remnant at a sustained temperature, keeping it malleable, but not too hot, as overheating could neutralize the Remnant. If you're wondering why Afton has been doing all these experiments throughout the series, it's strongly implied in the novel trilogy that his overarching goal is to find the secret to immortality. There's a scene in the fourth closet where one of the main characters tells Afton that he should be afraid to die. As if hell exists, that is certainly where he will end up. Afton responds by agreeing and confirming that he does indeed want to become immortal, as he is terrified of death. While this book isn't set in the world of the games, it's likely that this is also his motivation driving him throughout all these murders and experiments in the games. Afton seems to be trying to harness the power of Remnant so he can make himself immortal. As part of his experiments, he spreads the haunted metal throughout the Funtime animatronics, giving them life. And if you didn't understand this at first, hey, no worries, it's kind of vague. So let's just lay out all the evidence. In the third non-canon novel, The Fourth Closet, Afton retrieves the original animatronics endoskeletons and melts them into an amalgamation. He then extracts the children's remnant from it, which he then injects into the Funtime animatronics. While this book isn't canon, it's strongly implied that Afton also did this in the games, judging from the Scooper being designed to inject remnant. We know he stole the Freddy's endoskeletons in the games, as in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, all the remains of the original animatronics are their shells, with no endoskeletons.
What's up guys, subscribe, and I hope you're having a good day, and peace, I'm out.